What's going on, everybody? It is great to see you, and today we're going to be finishing up not necessarily the entire interstate infrastructure bill series, but we're going to be finishing up this mini segment on the three highest priority corridors, and of course, this is the big one. This is the one that I've got the most to talk about. There's a lot more things going on with this, and of course, this is Interstate 69. Now, this is actually not a joke. It's real. There is an Interstate 69. And it used to be about a 250-mile stretch that only existed in northern Indiana. Largely, it was Detroit to Indianapolis was the original route of this. There's some add-ons here where it goes up a little bit north of Detroit, but I digress. We'll talk about the original route, and then what had happened was that back in 91, when the interstate system was coming to a close, they were negotiating the new part of the highways. This is the new Federal Highway Administration Act. I've talked about this many times. And one of the things that they were talking about was having a super trade alliance with Mexico and Canada called Nafta. Well, NAFTA got ratified. And as a part of this, a new highway was supposed to be the NAFTA superhighway, the bridge between Mexico and Canada that everything was going to be built out on. And this ended up being the I-69 project. It was actually greenlit all the way back in 1991. But once again, the problem with feds is that sometimes they greenlit projects, but they never give the money for it. And of course, what has largely happened as a result of this is that interstates are not cheap, particularly when you have to have environmental studies and commissions and lawsuits and all these other things. And so basically any state that wasn't going to benefit from building the I-69 project directly wasn't going to build it. And so there's only been necessarily 2 or 3 that have actually built it in any kind of capacity. Number 1 is Kentucky, number 2 is Indiana, and number 3 is Texas. We're going to get into why. So without further ado, let's talk about this general route and where it was, what it is, and where we're at now. I'm just trying to pull this up. I've got a lot of stuff I've got to throw at you guys. So here we go. Google Maps, once again. So technically I-69 actually starts all the way up here at Sonera on the Canada U.S. border. It actually doesn't go up to Detroit, but it's kind of a bypass here, and I'll talk about why. Largely goes up around Flint, Lansing, and then goes down through to Fort Wayne. But if you're going to get up to Fort Wayne, eventually you're going to jump up on I-90. You'll go up to Toledo into Detroit, or you can get on I-94, which is its own particular mess of things. But this is supposed to be the NAFTA superhighway. You'll take this particular route, and then you can go all the way up into Toronto and all the way up into Montreal and the like. And it makes sense, and that was originally the plan, and it was built out. Largely, it was added on as part of that corridor up in Michigan. Now, I don't know if that was actually part of the original interstate program up there, but what I definitely can tell you is that the Fort Wayne and Indianapolis corridor is very, very old, and has been there since the interstate program began, and it was largely the access road to get up into I-90 so you could get up into Detroit and what have you, and so it serviced Indiana, my state, in a particular way. Well, we have been adding on. So Indiana is, we didn't have anything from Indianapolis down into the Evansville area. We've been wanting that for a long time, and the feds greenlit it. So we're like, yeah, great, we want the funding. Originally, we couldn't get the funding to build it, and then we were going to do a toll road, and eventually what happened was that compromise was made between the Republicans and the Democrats to where they were going to put up some serious money. Ended up being, so far, the estimated cost is about $1.2 billion for the whole project. But largely since the groundbreaking about 2007, where they took, this used to be 464 around Evansville, and they've repurposed it all in I-69. They discontinued 464. And they started building up into this general area, and they got it all the way up to Oakland. That was Section 1, and Petersburg, Washington. This is all my neck of the woods, so this is all very quaint to me. Eventually, they got up into Bloomington, which was the big goal. It allows me to get up in there very, very easily, which wonderful place, home of Indiana University. And then it gets all the way up to Martinsville, and this is where they're left off. They're now at Section 6, and that is finishing the upgrades of US 37 to interstate quality to connect into Indianapolis. So let's get into that particular thing. Oh, and by the way, here's the route as overall where we stand now. is this is actually a little bit older, or a little old, but here's the overall route for the I-69 project across the country. And we'll zoom in just a little bit here. Texas has some crazy things going on where they want to do it. I'm not going to even remotely get into that. But largely, this is going to be this is largely a superhighway that's going to connect Houston into the Midwest in a particular way. That's absolutely going to be very necessary. So let's get into Indiana. The reason why Indiana has so much data on this and so much available that I can talk about is not only because I live here, but also in the regard that we've actually done a lot of work in getting it. Some other states have been able to pile on to that. We'll talk about Kentucky here shortly. But Section 1, 3-mile stretch to Oakland City, that was knocked out before 2010 or 2011. Section 2 ties into my area with Washington. And then Section 3 gets all the way up to the Crane Naval Base. That has all been completed. Section 4 largely tied up into southern Bloomington and connected to Indiana 37. That has all been completed as well. And it gave us an access from the southern part of the state into the central part of the state, which is Brown County. Very nice area. Very wonderful place to live and be. But anyway, in a general sense, is that it finally gave me a hopscotch to Bloomington, because that was a pain in the ass to drive up to. Section 5 was getting up to Martinsville. This is actually the spot that's most recently been completed. It's been finished up. We're good to go. And now it ties us into Indianapolis in a pretty good way, because 37 was undivided highway all the way up there. And when Section 5 was finished, it was absolutely comparable to going US 4170 up to Indianapolis for most of this region. And so it's largely already started to build out some decent economic development. Problem is that Section 6 is actually the hardest part. We started with the easy parts first. Section 6 will be finished out. There's no doubt about that. It's funded, it's prepared, it's ready to go. Everything is planned. We know what we're doing. It's going to be, it's literally the project finish line is what we're calling it. And we'll have it tie into Indianapolis by 2024 is the completion date. There is a bypass section where they shut down all of Martinsville. It's an absolute bastard right now. But hopefully it's supposed to be opened up literally for Thanksgiving weekend is what it was supposed to be done. So we'll see what happens. I haven't been up there. But in a general sense, is that this is all supposed to be opened up within the next couple of years. And there's one other segment that needs to be done in Indiana, and that's a collaboration project between Indiana and Kentucky to replace the old bridge that goes across the Ohio River and continues I-69 into Kentucky. So we will bring this up here in a minute. But yeah, I-69 up to Martinsville, and then it'll be upgraded to 37. And we'll actually show you the plans because, it's actually in my stuff here. So going up here is Martinsville. You can see that this is all shut down. It's actually in the planning stage and construction stage. Now, according to my information on this particular database, this has not been opened up. However, sometimes it does take a couple of moments to update, a couple days, or what have you. But you can tell with all of this, that's all planned out. It's all being under construction. It's all being updated to the interstate standard, and that goes all the way up into Indianapolis. Now, most of you probably don't care about that, so I'm just going to sketch over. I try not to maintain too much of a homeland bias. You can tell that some of this is still planned out, working. All of this is getting worked on, although some of this isn't necessarily quite finished out in the way that it needs to. Sorry, I'll put it this way. Some of this hasn't been quite brought up to date yet. Like this is... the planning here is to finish this road here, and then they're going to be starting to work on the intersection here. They're going to have to tear that out and redo it completely. And I don't see the plans for here updated yet. But all this has actually already been planned out. They're going to redirect 37 as I-69, and they're going to refurbish this entire section of I-465. And, it's all part of I-74 now. Fantastic. They're going to repurpose all of this. They're going to actually re-steer this interchange, and they're going to make it right into here. And so that will be finished. I actually thought that was on this map. It's very unfortunate. So next, we're going to talk about Kentucky. Well, the good news is Kentucky is very, very easy to talk about because almost all of it's done. Largely what you have to do here is that there is going to be a new interchange built here in southern Indiana, just south of Evansville. They're going to repurpose all of this into interstate and they're going to build 2 new bridges, go in through this corridor, tie into here, and the groundbreaking for this starts next year. In fact, I'm actually surprised. I was looking at this. None of this is actually on the docket. Everything's planned for the most part. They're finalizing a few reports for Section 2, but Section 1 is going to go from US 41 to US 60 and tie in about right here. That's all finalized. Groundbreaking starts literally in a couple months. So I'm really surprised that that's not on here, but things be things. That is the case. And so I-69 technically terminates right here with the intersection of 41. This is all technically expressway still, all the way up until about this point. And so they're going to refurbish a few of these intersections to make them interstate grade. The problem is there's too many intersections too close to each other. So some of this is going to get repurposed and rebuilt in a particular way. I don't remember exactly what all the plans were off the top of my head, but there's going to be a new interchange here with US 41, and there's going to be a road that comes off through here, goes up to through 60, goes up through this general area here, and will tie in somewhere into this general vicinity of I-69 here. And one of these bridges over here on US 41 will be destroyed and will be gotten rid of, and it will become a one-way divided highway. And basically US 41 is going to get demoted. The reason why they're doing that instead of upgrading, because most of this is all good or is interstate quality, or at least good enough, is downtown Henderson. US 41 ties into that. There's not nearly enough money to repurpose all this and rebuild. It literally will just be better to do what they're going to do, which I don't blame them on. Interstates are expensive. Okay, so getting into Kentucky, guess what? It's all done. Everything but the bridge to Indiana has all been completed. It's done. And this is part of the Parkway system. Now, Purchase Parkway is actually what it used to be. And that goes all the way down into Kentucky. And you'll notice that it actually ends right here. In Tennessee. Ends right here in Tennessee. So, anyway, all of that is, excuse me, all of that is all done. Part of the Parkway system that Kentucky has built out, and they just repurposed their roads for that. Well done to Kentucky. There's some things I could probably add on to, but suffice it to say is that Kentucky just did the legwork. They put a lot of money into their infrastructure. I've got some gripes about Kentucky, don't get me wrong. I think they prioritize some wrong stuff, but they do roads and they do infrastructure almost better than anybody else. And so simply suffice it to say, well done, Kentucky, and kicking ass. You guys are the first state to be done with this project. Next, Tennessee. Tennessee's a pain in the ass. So there's a long story short here. Tennessee has actually had a lot of this earmarked for quite a while, and you can see they're wanting to make this the future I-69 project. I think they actually technically have to redo some of this, otherwise it is not interstate grade and it's bad. So this interchange is going to get redone, but I don't see any finalized plans for it. But anyway, going to tie into I-69 here. This is all the future corridor. Most of that's already built out, done. It could be updated today if they wanted to. They're going to go around this is the Union City. And this actually bothers me quite a bit. And we'll show you on the maps here why this does. This is a nice bypass. It's nice. Now, granted, you'd have to change up some areas here. That would be... Or you'd have to change up some of these areas to be brand new intersections, and you couldn't do some of the things that you already have. But this is a really nice spot, really nice bypass. It's all built out. And the only thing is that you'd have to move some stuff around a little bit, but this wouldn't be horrifically expensive to get this upgraded. Now, maybe I'm wrong here. There's some spots where there's some tight fits here. Some of this doesn't necessarily work. But instead, and you can see on this map, they're building an entire new section of interstate. So all this is going to be brand new, and half of this has already been built out, or at least has been worked on. And you can see this on this map here, future I-69 corridor that goes around town and then actually bypasses over here, not reintegrating, bypasses again, and goes all the way south of Troy before reintegrating. And some of that just doesn't make sense to me. That has to be a terrible use of taxpayer money and dollars, because this is undivided highway. Maybe you need to split it up. I don't know. But there's definitely areas where you could eminent domain this. You could absolutely rework this into something that is far more cost efficient. And I've got to just ask questions here. I don't think Tennessee did the right thing. And it may have quite a bit to do with why they're having funding issues. Just to show you that they've been working on it back in August of 2019. So, here's the thing. This is segment 7 of I-69 in Tennessee. This is according to their website. Survey completed back in 2002, so they've been on board with it. Phase 1 construction all the way back in 2009 happened, and then Phase 3 and Phase 5 construction forecasted for February of 2016 and December of 2016. Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's been a while. And that actually is part of what we saw here on the map. This is all the construction program that has been started. It's not finished yet. It's literally not finished yet. They've been going for about a half the time that we have up here in Indiana, and they're still not even done with this segment. Well, number one, at least from what I've been aware of, is they're having funding issues. I can't imagine why. It's almost like you guys took the more expensive route, or at least from what it looks like to be the more expensive route. And so they're having issues and they're having problems. Not surprising at all. The second part of it is that they're going to have to figure out what directions they're going to take after right. Now, apparently from US 51 on the, this is the Gerald B. Ford Memorial Highway, all the way down to Dryersburg. This is all interstate quality. They could actually label it. And somebody has told me that their maps actually have it now labeled as I-69. It's been formally brought into the system. Nothing I have on Google or what have you confirms this, but technically it is all interstate quality and grade, and if you check the speed limits, it is all 70-mile-an-hour speed limits through there. After that, you get into some questions, and I tried to find some maps here. They are going to take pretty much all of US 40 or 51, and they want to upgrade that to I-69, but they're having conversations about which routes they're going to take, and I think there's been some lessons learned about the Union City bypass on where they're going to upgrade and where they're not. And so there's a lot of conversations going south from Dryersburg down to Memphis about what they're going to do and what exact routes they're going to take. Some of it is absolutely going to get bypassed, particularly here in Covington. There's no way they're going to go through the middle of downtown. But on other parts of this, they are absolutely going to eminent domain and tear all this shit out, and they're going to make it interstate quality grade. And some people are going to lose some businesses. Some people are going to be upset. But that's absolutely what's going to happen. And if there's any more federal pushing to get this up and running, there's definitely that's going to happen. So anyway, if Tennessee actually gets money to put money or to get from the infrastructure bill, this is their number one priority outside of a few things of upgrades like for I-40 and I-65, I-40, I-24. 24 is largely serviced. They're fine. I-40 needs some work. I-65 is busy as hell. So outside of I-65 upgrades, we're largely looking at I-69 getting done from federal dollars from the infrastructure bill to get these communities up and running and working. And I can't wait. I absolutely can't wait to have all that done because that makes my trip to Memphis way easier. I've never been to Memphis, and so I actually did the math on it. It's about 15 minutes longer depending on it. Sometimes it's only about 10 or 5, depending on how bad that I-55 corridor is choked up, which we talked about in the last episode. Once we get down to Memphis, it will largely move into Mississippi, as Memphis is right there at the Mississippi border. Let me make sure that I've got all my files here that I want to have. So I apologize for just a second. That is not what I wanted. Sorry. Yeah, okay, so we'll use this. This is Mississippi, a part of it. Mississippi has at least planned out the corridor as to where they want it to go and what they want it to do. But on the other side of that is that they're absolutely not interested in building it. And in fact, there's another there's another photo I have, and I think it's right here. No, I'm sorry, that's actually the Tennessee photo I have. But we won't worry about that. So here we go. So the parts that are actually on construction by Mississippi is the section in red here on this particular map. We'll zoom in. That's what's under construction. Everything else is unfunded and just largely been planned out. They have some ideas. Well, if we go back to this particular segment here, is that you can tell this is actually I-669. And this is the bypass around Memphis to help facilitate trade and ease of access around the city because it's growing and it's quite productive. And so they're building out there as basically the southern end. That's all getting constructed. That's all being done, and that makes sense. But all the upgrades and all the other pathways of I-69, it's not funded, and they're not really interested in it. They were largely wanting to follow the US 61 corridor and the US 49 corridor, from what I understand. But yeah, US 61 all the way down to about Greensville. And they're wanting to tie off and kind of reallocate some highways to go across the Mississippi on a new bridge because it's a pain in the ass to get through here. That being said, there's not a lot here outside of Greenville and Clarksdale. These aren't huge cities, but actually having interstate access will help facilitate it, but it's not connected in any kind of way. And what we usually see with a lot of these newer interstate programs in a sense is that they tend to have like one direction of interstate corridor access, but they don't have two. And so they are largely funding these areas to get access at least through basically a bi-directional way or a multi-directional way so that it facilitates easy access and trade through those areas. But the places that haven't had access to any kind of interstate have largely been languished and have been left behind. And so you get the situation where it doesn't make economic sense today to do it, but they're hoping that in the event that once they finally do fund it, they pay for it, they maintenance it, you will have the economic build out in these areas, in these regions that allows the access and that allows the access to build out economically in the region so that this all ends up being worth it. Now, personally, I don't think I-69 is going to be paying bills anytime soon for Mississippi or even Arkansas. We'll get into Arkansas here in just a moment. But it will help these communities start growing out, particularly Clarksdale being able to integrate into the Memphis area and act as generally like a spoke on the wheel. And so that will help a lot. Southern or central Mississippi, southern Arkansas, they do want this because there is literally like no access here in this particular region. But on the other side of that is that it just doesn't make a lot of sense. So here you go. Here is the I-69 project in Arkansas. And the funny thing about this is they've already built some of this. And they've already worked on some of this to some degree. But it's not really that much. And actually the number one thing that they're doing is building connector to where I-69 will be without I-69 even being in existence. So yeah, that's a little weird, ain't it? We'll definitely get into that. I'm just going to close some of these out. So let's talk about the area that we're talking about here. They're largely in a crossover right in here, right in this general region, and it will go over to about US 278. And we showed it on the map here. We can't even drop into this. This is all new, but this is the bypass. Now, right now, it's only a one lane road on both sides that bypasses Monticello, but this is actually all earmarked to be part of the interstate program. They're going to upgrade all of this at some given point to be accessible. And this will actually be part of the I-69 corridor, and you can kind of tell they're already preparing for this to some degree with how they've built out everything. And so this is actually going to be the corridor, and it looks like they've even got some of this lined out. No, that's power lines. Sorry about that. But it's largely going to follow up around these power lines all the way over into this general region. They'll integrate over at, this is US 65, and they will eventually cross into Mississippi. You can see these areas are sparsely populated. Arkansas is interested in building up on some of this because they're wanting to allow some access into Warren, Monticello, and then eventually down here in El Dorado. El Dorado is actually pretty sizable in southern Arkansas. But there's no way to access all this stuff. And what they're largely going to do is they're going to help build out the I-69 project throughout here. It's almost all of it's going to be new roads and new access into these areas, but you'll have a lot faster travel between these three cities, and it's supposed to go south of Warren all the way through this region and into outside of El Dorado, largely around this highway here, 172. Is the general region that we've seen. Now, some of this isn't even finalized and all backed out, but that's the general path that they want to take, and they want to integrate some of these areas into the country at large because this is not serviced. Look at all this land. All this land, no interstate, not accessible. It's not going to be good. And largely what they're doing is they're actually building out the access from 530 in Pine Bluff down to Monticello. So they're upgrading, 530 here, Arkansas 530. And you can actually tell that they were working on it, they were building it. All this is built up to access down into Monticello as a bypass, and then eventually will be integrated into the region with writ large with I-69. Let's move into Louisiana. Now, Louisiana doesn't have really much of anything to talk about here. The only major stuff that they've been working on is the I-69 project outside of Shreveport. They haven't even built it, but they have done the studies. And so, excuse me, don't want to see that. Into a whole general theme here is, Shreveport is largely where it's going to be. It's kind of going to complete the bypass of 220 is what the general thing that they're wanting to do here. Maybe go a little bit further out. I believe the map here showed that they were going to cross in through right here. And so you can see where they're going to tie in. And so we're not sure exactly where it's going to go, if I-69 is going to go up around Magnolia or if it's going to like split the difference and go right between Magnolia and El Dorado. It would make sense to do that. Tie-ins around Hayesville, maybe go south to Minden, but most likely it's going to go around Sepra here and to Shreveport. Now, all of this is still like very theoretical. No one has their attention on here. Texas, on the other hand, is where all of this changes. And so there is a lot to say about Texas because Texas is pushing like hell to get this done. And this is a lot of stuff. And I'm sorry if you can't see this on the general view screen here, but there are parts of 69 that is actually done in Texas, and they are actually going to split it into 3 in the southern parts of the state. Do not ask me why. It makes no sense. But Texas being Texas is going to get a lot of what they want. The problem here is that Texas doesn't believe in funding all this stuff. And so they've been having a hard time getting a lot of this built. But you can tell that they've got all the corridors earmarked. They know where it's all going to go. All this stuff is already been working on. Sections have been designated since the early part of the decade. And, they have been building out parts of this interstate, and they have definitely shown where they're wanting to go. So let me just finish this out here, and we can talk about it. Some of this is not on the planning docket, and we'll move down here and we'll show you. Some of these are expressways, but none of this is showing much in the way of planning. There is like 1 or 2 sections that I did see along this corridor that was to be upgraded. We'll see if we can spot that out on the way through. I haven't picked it up. Not quite what we were looking for here. This is actually part of the I-69 project that is done. So we're just outside of Houston here. But all of I-69 goes all the way up to just about short of this city of Cleveland here. And technically, it's all largely being brought up. Yeah, here we go. All largely being upgraded to facilitate this. And so what is currently labeled here US 59 is actually the frontage roads, or will be the frontage roads of I-69. So cool, fantastic. Great stuff, right? So that's where we're at right here. I-69 up here into Cleveland. They're all upgrading all this stuff. And according to this map, is that it's all been designated part of I-69. Hooray and wonderful. Well done, guys. And so I-69 currently goes into just the northern part of the state, or the northern part of the city, and it gets to this point right here where they can no longer continue it because that is not allowed. So they're going to continue building this up, but this is the US 59 corridor. Some of this has actually all been upgraded to the interstate standards as part of this build out. And once it is all done, they will designate it in full I-69. Now, some of this absolutely needs a lot of work. This is not okay in any way, shape, or form. That is not going to work. But in a general sense is that this is the corridor. This is what they're going to be building out on. And most of this is going to get in eminent domain, even though Texas hates to do that kind of thing. There is pretty much no other option. They have to follow the US 59 route, which means a lot of people are going to get upset. And that means a lot of money, because eminent domain does mean that you have to compensate people, even if you're going to screw them. And so, to a large degree, some of this, like this area here, will be bypassed, but most of these areas will not. They will be absolutely just taken over eminent domain and brought into the interstate system writ large, as you can see with places like this. And so, as an example here, this is the general route here in 59. They want to be able to tie in Lufkin, Texas into the regions Natagoshes here as an example, and tie it into 84 all the way into Shreveport. 59 here. They might actually, the talk here that I'm aware of is that here at Natagoshes is that they will maybe, or they're not sure exactly what they want to do. They might take 59 into 84 and then expand it up into Shreveport, but that's a little too far south. What's very likely is that they're going to continue to follow this route into Carthage, and then they'll go into southern Louisiana that way, because that seems to be what Louisiana wants. On the other side of that is that they're still going to continue to upgrade 59 because it just splits off here and goes this way. 59 is going to be part of the I69 expansion, and they are going to upgrade all of all of US 59 all the way up here to Texarkana, and they want that to be all interstate quality, which it most definitely is not. But they want to be able to tie Texarkana into this project, so 59 all the way down to Carthage at minimum is going to get upgraded either way, and that ties into Interstate 20 and ties up into Interstate 30, 30 and 49 in Texas. And that is an absolute win for Texas once they get that built, and will provide multiple ways into Houston, and that actually is part of the I-57 expansion plan, is that even if I-67 gets done, this is a win for Texas, because if they build out 59 to be part of the I-69 project, and it will probably be its own interstate, or it'll be a major Texas highway that is to interstate grade and character, is that once they have that built out, is that provides an immense amount of access into the Texas Triangle, both in the north and the southern part and through Houston. And this is going to be an absolute win for Texas when this is done. So here's the thing. Let's wrap this up, because we've already been at 31 minutes. I told you guys I was going to talk about this one for a while, and there's so many more details and studies I could have brought up regarding like what's going around Livingston, Texas. They've got a lot of the paperwork from TxDOT is out there. All of it's funding. All of this is funding. All of this is going to be about how Texas worries about doing this. I think sooner or later Texas is going to just batten down the hatches and either take out some numbers to do this, or we'll make this toll roads. Now, Texas loves their toll roads. I absolutely hate this. And Texas is finding out some of these toll roads don't work. Largely what the bypass routes that they've done, Texas had to actually come in and rebuy them. It's only in the express lanes of like Dallas-Fort Worth that they're actually able to make money with these toll roads. And so I don't expect that this is going to end up being that. What I do expect is that Texas is going to have to buckle down the hatches on some of its money, and they might actually dip into their emergency funds, which they do have, and they didn't even spend it on COVID, to start building this stuff up, because this is an investment that they can't afford to ignore. If they want Houston and the Texas Triangle to continue developing like it is, and basically make it to where they're going to make money on the back end, which has been the entire point of the Texas economic development model, is allow the investment to come in, build it out ahead of time if they can, and allow everything else to pay itself off in the back end, which is a very growth mindset mentality. It's winning, and it's working for Texas. And so sooner or later, I think this project absolutely is going to get done, and Texas is going to be the major backer. To finish this out, Louisiana will follow suit within short, because it ties in Shreveport, which is politically a good move. Texas is going to push for it. And what we'll see, the holdouts, largely Arkansas and Mississippi, probably will be forced more or less to become part of this program because of Texas. Now, that being said, with the I-57 project, that will slow down to some degree, because most of what Texas wants, it will get out of the 57 project. But sooner or later, everyone's going to be on board with this project, although I could absolutely see it to where at some point there will be looking in the 2030s to get Mississippi and Arkansas as part of this project done. But I absolutely expect that Texas is probably going to have at least a third of this project done by the end of the decade, and if they don't have at least that, then they're going to be screwing themselves in the long term. But at least from everything I'm seeing, is that this is going to be a lot of eyes on deck for this particular project, because it just benefits way too many people, both in Tennessee, both in Kentucky, Indiana, and Texas, and anybody else who's a hanger-on still is going to be able to bring in economic development into an area that really needs it. The Mississippi River Basin there is some of the best land in the continent, and it's not really all that accessible or developed, and that is a crime. That is absolutely terrible, both for Arkansas and Mississippi, which really need to develop this area out. And so I'm super excited. I hope Arkansas and Mississippi can get the growth, or actually, you know what? Sorry. Arkansas is doing the right things. They're just prioritizing what they need. 57's next, probably. 49 will be after that, and then 69. Mississippi needs to have a lot more of a growth mindset. They don't have it. This is something they absolutely need to start dumping money on because this could be the future for them. The area of Greenville, Clarksdale, Cleveland, all the way up into Memphis, this could be the new economic corridor for Mississippi. These are all cheap lands, all easily able to develop. It's right there against the Mississippi. You can tie into the major shipping lanes that is part of the Mississippi Basin where you can, where you can offload a lot of raw materials and a lot of products from the Mississippi River through barges. All of this can be developed out. All of this can be the great growth spurt for Mississippi, but they have to change their mindset. They're going to have to tax people more. They're going to have to actually invest in this, and they're going to have to build out a future for their state. Because right now, they're literally Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama I make fun of all the time. They're usually the bottom performers of the country. Now, Alabama really can't help it. They don't have the great topography. But Louisiana, Mississippi, not so much the case. Mississippi is missing a gold mine here. And this interstate corridor goes right through the areas that they really need to develop. And in fact, I would actually partner with Louisiana in some regards to have an extension that goes into the northern part of Louisiana that would help build out this corridor, give a secondary way to cross around Greenville and heading south down towards Alexandria and New Orleans through the northern part of Louisiana, and that would absolutely help develop Louisiana into a major state. Without further ado, I'm done talking. I've spent a lot into what is all going on here. This will help a lot of people in a lot of ways, but it has to get funded, it has to get developed, and it's just a lot of money. It's a lot of money, it's a lot of material, but when it's done, it will be a major trade artery, at least in most sections, from the Midwest to the South, and it is why it's called the Nafta Superhighway. I've been Tyberius D. It's been great to see you all. I hope you are enjoying the dark mode sessions of what we've been doing. Let me know if you actually care. I don't think most of you do. But without further ado, I think I wrapped everything up. If you have any questions on this project, you need me to bring information, or if you have information for me, I'd love to hear it. Without further ado, we'll catch you guys next time. See ya.